Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, books, and popular culture. Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to the latest show. My name is Bruce Markison, and I'm joined by Tracy Asteria, co-host and producer. Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing really good, Bruce. Doing really good. Enjoying time and enjoying the summer, and everything's been going really well. How about you?
Good. Something I just found out this weekend, Popeye the Slayer Man 2 has been filming. I think they may have wrapped filming. I just discovered through the local newspaper, which covers Oneonta, 22 miles from Cooperstown, that they started filming in Oneonta in May, and I have to believe they've done by now. So the second chapter in the Popeye the Slayer Man series, Jason Stevens returns as Popeye. Elena Giuliano, the heroine of the first movie, is back. And according to IMDb, our friend Doug Decker is also going to be in the film. So I thought that was kind of fun to hear about that.
Oh, that's super exciting. Really exciting.
Yeah.
We'll have to get them on to a future podcast then.
Yeah. Robert Michael Ryan is directing again. Kyle Carvin, whom we've had on the show, along with Robert. Kyle's got a small part in the film.
Oh,
and he's also one of the writers of the screenplay. So they kind of snuck this in without telling me, which is fine. They probably don't want me hanging around the set, that kind of thing. I imagine they did a lot of late night filming for this one. I haven't seen the release date, but again, if they have finished the filming, and I think they would have by this point. I mean, you're talking May, June, July. We're recording early August. I think they'd be done by now. Wondering if maybe it'll be out in the fall, maybe October, maybe Halloween. We'll have to wait and see on that. But I was excited to hear about that going on. That local film company doing a lot of work in Oneonta, New York, right in our backyard. So wanted to mention that. Now it's on to our main attraction tonight. And Tracy, on this week's episode, we'll talk to author, writer, and blogger Bill Fleck. Bill's a retired teacher, writes the Substack newsletter, Classic Horror Behind the Scenes. He's authored a total of 5 books, 3 in the realm of horror. And in earlier volumes, Cheney's Baby and Cheney's Audition. But tonight we have the chance to talk about Bill's newest book, which is doing really well. It's called Bela's Monster, Lugosi, the Monster, and Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. It delves into the career of Lugosi with the focus on his appearance in several Frankenstein films, including his lone portrayal of the Frankenstein monster. So we welcome back to the Ghostly Gallery, Bill Fleck. Bill, how you been?
It is certainly good to be here. I don't know what happened to the driver and my luggage, and with all this, I thought I was in the wrong place. But I'm actually very much at home. It's good to be here. Thank you. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
Doing well.
Good.
Doing
Good,
well.
good, good. Well, I
won't
thank you
do
for
the
having me
entire
back.
that accent, but
Yeah,
it's
that
a
one needs
little
work.
disturbing.
That one needs a little work. Yeah, I gotta get back into that one a little bit. Run that scene back a few more times before I nail that one down. Okay. All right, figured, we'll just shotgun, see, with the spaghetti and see what sticks on the wall. So.
Well, we're going to try to cover a lot of material tonight, and Tracy's actually going to get our interrogation started, leading off. Tracy, take it away.
I've got my hand on the book. We're ready to go.
Awesome. I'll try not to interrogate too much. But I'm just going to kind of go back a little bit to your own experience as a classic horror fan. And I'm curious when you first discovered Bela Lugosi. And do you remember which one of his films kind of made the biggest impression on you?
At first, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I think you and I think we've talked about this before about how that's like the gateway drug, to the Universal monsters, because everybody was kind of cool with when we were little kids letting us watch Abbott and Costello, and so Abbott and Costello Frankenstein comes on, and here's this guy, you know, who's Dracula, and he's just in command of this entire thing, you know. And I think that was definitely the first film both my brother and I saw him in,
Mhm.
and of course the Cheney and the Wolfman and all that too. So that was definitely the film that made the big impression. Of course, my dad took us aside and said, like, "Oh, well, you gotta see the monsters when they're not being funny. You know, you gotta see the real thing." And that began, those nights when he'd wake us up in the middle of the night, you know, "Ben, Ben, get up, get up." I'm like 7, my brother's 4, you know, "Ben, Ben," you know, and go down and see The Bride of Frankenstein, stuff like that. But yeah, A&C Meet Frankenstein, and then, I think maybe Devil Bat was in there early too.
Oh,
Yeah, uh-huh.
wow.
Dracula took a little while because, of course, in those days, you had to wait until they came on TV, and I remember with horror that we set the alarm for Dracula and somehow or other slept through most of it, so the first exposure to Dracula was about, 60% of the movie was done, but, you know, the second what we saw was like, "Okay, well, we gotta make sure we catch this the next time," so yeah, it goes back that far.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's super awesome. Those are some pretty good movies.
Oh, yeah.
Um, just fantastic. I know I loved, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. That
Everybody
was a really good one.
Everybody, pretty much everybody loves that. Even people who don't
Yeah,
like Abbott and Costello much like that one.
that's
Yeah,
true.
I know. Of course, I
So,
love Abbott and Costello though, so
oh, same, same. I remember watching them growing up as a kid, just kind of like in old reruns, black and white TV, Sunday afternoons, just
yeah,
super
we
amazing.
were Sunday mornings, 11:30, and it was, you know, it was an after church thing, and it was actually kind of a more religious experience for us. Abbott and Costello, I mean, not to blaspheme or anything, so, you
Oh, jeez.
know.
Fun movies, though, very fun.
Yeah, and then of course, it kinda went from there.
Oh, awesome. And you've spent a lot of time researching Bela Lugosi. And I'm also wondering, because you spent a lot of time researching him for your book and just like researching him over the years, did you come away seeing him as a person rather than just an actor? Like did you I guess feel a difference between just the actor and the person?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of this has to do with, first of all, writing this book, but then also standing on the backs of a lot of people of what has come before. I mean, I remember when we were kids in the library, there was Arthur Lennox, the Count, and there was Bob Kramer's Lugosi, the Man Behind the Cape. And
Mhm.
if we didn't have one of those books checked out of the library, we had the other one checked out. And for me, then of course you add on top of it the work that's been done over the years by Greg Bank, by Gary D. Rhodes, Bill Kaffenberger, you know, Tom Weaver's thrown some stuff in there. There's just a lot of great Lugosi scholarship out there.
Mhm.
But for me, what was really cool about this, because I spent a lot of time researching Cheney, but I thought I kind of knew a lot about Lugosi, and I did, but the real thing for me, Kramer really, for me, brought out like the human side. I reread his book
Mhm.
before I started this project again. It was He's got an expanded version of that coming out. Rumors are now sometime this month, but probably by December, and I'm really looking forward to that. And he's been very nice in his compliments about my current book too, which is really cool.
Oh,
But
nice.
what I found that was really interesting to me, if I could put it in a nutshell this time around, was Bela's feeling of responsibility to the world in terms, especially when it came to the Second World War.
Mhm.
You know, his homeland got swallowed up in that whole Nazi thing. There were a lot of collaborators. You know, they had joined up with Hitler and the Japanese at that particular time. And Lugosi basically was saying to people that, and in speeches and going around, that, you know, the regular Hungarians really weren't these folks,
Mm.
and that Hungary was in a great deal of trouble. And he really, really rallied Hungarian Americans to the cause and raised all kinds of money and outfitted ambulances. And he was a very, very, very anti fascist personality. He kind of downplayed his political involvement back in Hungary when he was a young man after getting out of the First World War, where he fought and was wounded 3 times. And he was very much, he was a communist supporter of the Cuban regime, et cetera, et cetera. And then that got flipped over, and there was the royalists took over, and he basically had to get out of town, because he did have a target on his back, and he took his first wife with him, and she just couldn't cut it. It was a rough road to hoe, and she saw that coming. And when he got over here to the United States, he kind of downplayed that, but he was very, very grateful to be an American. He became an American citizen in 1931, incredibly proud of doing that. And when the chips were down for the Second World War, he went around and made speeches. He made speeches against anti-Semitism. There's a very moving speech he made in 1944 where he actually put a Star of David band on his arm, and he said, "Just because I'm wearing this does not change me. How can we think that these are the kinds of things that can happen and that people are changed by, these stupid labels that we put on them?" I mean, he was powerfully motivated to make people's lives that way better. And I think that was something that was always a big part of his personality, no matter what he was doing. He took time off from actually a revival of Dracula on the stage to do some of these things. And of course, while he was shooting Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, he's doing this stuff on the side too. And I think that's one of the things for me that helped inform the book, because if you read Kurt Siodmak's screenplay, where the monster is obviously Ygor, and obviously it's dovetailed off the end of The Ghost of Frankenstein, where he's got this whole megalomaniac thing going on. By the time Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman comes along, he's going to rule the world. And the question is, well, how's that going to happen? And the answer to that is what Ygor says: my brain in that body will make me a leader of men. Not going to do it himself. He's going to get a bunch of people surrounding him who understand that A, this guy's got the strength of 100 men. B, he's incredibly, maybe evilly intelligent, but incredibly intelligent. And C, he can't be destroyed. So this might be somebody to kind of hook up with. And I think a lot of that spoke to what was going on in Europe at the time. Siodmak having escaped Nazi Germany, I think a lot of those lines were meant to suggest the fascist leading at that particular time. I think that's how Bela played it. And I think that's one of the losses that we have, that he was playing that particular type of character at that particular time, when he was also involved in real life in trying to rally fellow Hungarians to the cause of democracy. So I think it's kind of a shame that version of the monster didn't really get out there, because it was a different character than Karloff. Totally different character than Cheney, until Cheney got Igor's brain popped in his head. You basically have Karloff the newborn, you have Cheney the terrible two, who is not listening pretty much to anybody. He kills Ygor, intentionally, but he's not. He's rough on Ygor. The Karloff monster never did that. The Cheney monster pushes him around and crushes him behind a door and all this other.
That's right.
And then at the end, with the uniting, you've got that terrible two body with the sly and sinister brain, and then that morphs into Igorstein, as they call it, in the classic horror board, Rondo people, which is a completely different character. And unfortunately, all that got cut out. And so people just see Bela, stumbling around, and they don't understand, unless they do this kind of research, or, with any luck, read my book, they don't understand what Bela is trying to do. What Siodmak, I think, was trying to do.
Oh, wow.
That to me was kind of like the big thing here. I talked this over with Christopher Gauthier, and he's a big Bela guy and a big Bela scholar, and he had the Dracula Never Dies series. Got a Rondo again for the second volume, which was really cool. And we both kind of, talked about the idea that this was a completely different character. Bela's not playing the Karloff character. Unfortunately, he's being measured against that because of what happened. But he's not. That's not the character that he's playing, and that might have appealed to him too.
Oh, interesting.
There
Oh,
was a
thank
lot to it.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot to it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know some of that background about Bela, so that's really good. Thank
A
you.
lot of that came out. Again, Kramer, Lennig, Mank, Rhodes, and Kaffenberger. Rhodes and Kaffenberger are just, man, they are digging up the stuff on Bela that, I mean, this is, you talk about like what happened in the Mummy, and they pull the sarcophagus out, and, oh, we didn't know this was there. I mean, what those guys have come up with is just absolutely amazing. And the myths that they've busted are also very cool. I mean, Bela loved to tell stories. So, I mean, he talked about how he made his debut in Romeo and Juliet. Well, no, he didn't. He did play Romeo and Juliet later on, but it wasn't his debut,
Right.
Yeah.
So you got to cut through that. And those guys were really great at doing that. And so for me, when I got kind of a taste of that aspect of his personality and saw the dialogue that Siodmak had written for the Ygor Stein monster, I felt that there was a natural connection between the character and the megalomaniacs that were running around Europe at that particular time. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, people apparently laughed. Who laughed? Why they laughed? We've never narrowed that down. Siodmak always said that they laughed at Bela. Who told him that? Was he there? I guess he was there at the screening, but did somebody come up to him and say, like, man, that movie would have been great, Kurt, but he's delivering your dialogue really bad. I mean, that's is that what happened? Or is that just Kurt kind of thrown off responsibility for writing these kind of like grandiose lines and people having a difficult time kind of imagining that coming out of the monster? I don't know.
Yeah.
Was it political? Was it too political? Did it get cut because it was too political? I don't know. The story is that Bela didn't deliver the lines very well. And that they were too funny. I can't imagine that because we kind of see this happening at the end of Ghost of Frankenstein, where Chaney is moving his lips to Bela's dialogue, and there's nothing really funny about it. It really works. Pretty scary.
We're going to get more into that aspect of the film, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, a little bit later on. For those who are watching on YouTube, this is the cover of the book, Bela's Monster, and that classic picture of Bela in the Frankenstein monster makeup. It's over 400 pages, a lot of great material in there. Certainly one of the themes is Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, but you cover many earlier parts of Lugosi's life. Growing up in Europe, you talk about his appearances in the early films, Dracula, Murders in the Rue Morgue, White Zombie, and others too. Now, for many years, Bill, we've been led to believe that Lugosi turned down the part of the Frankenstein monster in the 1931 classic. He felt it looked like a scarecrow. He didn't like the fact that there were no speaking lines. That's always been a commonly accepted theory, at least among lay people. But your book indicates that might not be true. There might be another story to that.
Yeah, I don't see how it could be. He was a contract player, and Frankenstein was the second film that he was to make after Dracula on that contract. And as a contract player, your executives told you you're going to play a part. You're going to play the part, otherwise you're going to be suspended. Okay, and did Bela have that kind of power at that particular time? I don't think so. The other side of it too is we know that James Whale didn't want him. And so Flory wanted him not for the monster, but Flory wanted him for the doctor, which I think would have been very interesting to see Lugosi play that. I love what Colin Clive did with it. And it's difficult to see anybody else in that role, but is it possible that Lugosi as, Henry Frankenstein, the medical student, could have flown with a little adjustments in the script? Yeah, I think that would have been excellent. And I think that Bela liked to tell the story. I mean, Greg Mack points out that, till the day Lillian died, she believed that Bela turned down the part. But I think that's what he wanted people to believe. And he wanted people to believe also that he created his own rival. He went around and told the story that was the one who talked to Karloff about taking part, which is complete fantasy. I understand what he's doing, but it's a complete fantasy. He didn't offer that to Karloff. James Whale offered that to Karloff. And it's obvious that Whale didn't want Bela in it. And I think what it comes down to is that Whale didn't want Bela. Whale went to Laemmle. What Whale wanted at that point in his life, Laemmle was going to grant. A few years later, when they both, got shipped down the line, well, that's a different story. But at that particular point in the history of Universal, that's what happened there. And he was kind of prescient, which was, we talked about, being a scarecrow, and the monster in the Flory script is a completely different character than the Karloff character. It's not anywhere near as sympathetic. Or other people have described it as being a killing machine, and I can see that reading the script. It's not the in-depth performance that we definitely got from Karloff in that character. So for Lugosi to say that it's kind of a scarecrow, and then to kind of see what ends up happening all the way in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, where pretty much is a scarecrow. Certainly in House of Frankenstein, a House of Dracula, man, he's just kind of lying around there and prop him up in the field, and the birds are going to fly away, and so I think he was a little bit prescient about that version of the monster. And what's kind of cool is that Karloff, of course, brings so much more to that, and Whale obviously encourages that in Karloff to the point where he actually got a little jealous of Karloff, but. That's a story for another day.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about your book, and there are a lot of things, but you have much praise for what Lugosi did in a film that a lot of people don't talk about anymore, but it's an interesting film and it's a great performance, White Zombie.
Yeah.
And it's a film that, it drew a fair amount of criticism at the time.
Yeah.
And it's still drawing criticism to this day. It still has maybe some of the remnants of the silent era. It's not a smooth film. There's some overacting. Yeah. There are some problems with it, but Lugosi's performance as Murder Legrande, I believe I'm saying that correctly, is just so overwhelming. Is this another case of Bela's performance simply rising above the surrounding material, which maybe is just mediocre or slightly better than mediocre?
I think probably what you're dealing with there is not only that, but Bob Kramer pointed out that Bela was very much involved in the direction of the film, which, kind of harkens back to his days on the stage when he first got over here in New York in the 1920s, and he was running his own theater company, kind of a Hungarian prototype Orson Welles. He was picking the plays and starring in them and directing the company and all that. And apparently he wasn't happy with what was happening with Victor Halperin, the director on that. And then apparently he stepped in from time to time with more than suggestions regarding camera placement and, how to bring out the more macabre elements of this particular film. I've seen it again recently. It is a kind of an antique. It's a piece that kind of exists within its own universe. So if you kind of sit back and watch it in that term of its own, kind of its own, almost in its own box, and nothing else looks like it. And except that from that aspect, it becomes, it's easier for us to deal with today. If you kind of look at it, I mean, I feel kind of the same way about The Raven. I look at The Raven as being like this absolutely wonderful cartoon, because things happen in there that can't possibly happen in real life. But if I'm seeing it in animation, I'm going with it, no problem,
Yeah,
but
that's a wild movie.
It is. And to kind of make sense of the characters and all that, for me, it's kind of like, well, this is a very sophisticated Warner Brothers cartoon, and boy, does it work on that level. And I mean, I love what Bela does in that film, and everybody around him, Samuel S. Hines in particular. The same kind of feeling for me with White Zombie. You know, it's sort of like this kind of exists in its own vacuum, as you say, very silent film with the irises and the glass paintings and all that. And the glass paintings are beautiful. They're absolutely gorgeous. And you look up, you know, where they first get to, you know, the missionary and the hero there are going to go save Madge Bellamy in that castle. And there's those beautiful process shots, you know, where the castle's up on the mountain. I've always kind of wanted to live in a place like that. You know, have the villagers go by and say, "Oh, what's that?" You know, Bill Fleck's house. Nobody goes there, you know. But yeah, I feel like if you accept it today as its own thing and not compare it to anything realistic, because it's not realistic, but it exists within its own kind of framework of logic, then it really is something to behold. It's still, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he did transcend the material there, and I think he also added to the material there. So, yeah.
I haven't seen White Zombie yet, but it's on my list. So I'm definitely going to have to watch that sooner rather than later because
Yeah.
I've always been curious about it.
They have the big problem with White Zombie over the years has been the reproduction of the soundtrack. Even the Criterion, I found the soundtrack to be kind of muddy, and they've had, I think the Grown Group did it. It may be Blu-ray now. You have to check me on that. But the last version I streamed, the soundtrack was a little cleaner, but it works a little bit better if you put the subtitles on. Even though they get some of the dialogue wrong, it helps you to kind of follow it. For whatever reason, well, it fell into public domain pretty early. And once it falls into public domain, you know, anybody can dupe it. And you get I remember the first one I had was that old VHS tape, and it was like, you know, they get, you know, what was that? Was he in there? You know, and yeah, so just be prepared and try to find a copy that has the cleanest soundtrack that's available. There was some canned silent film music that they used in there that is absolutely perfect for the film.
Oh, wow.
Way over the top dramatic, and it just works with the visual sense of the film. The soundtrack actually works very well with the visual sense of the film if you can find a fairly clean copy. So I think you'll like that.
Oh, interesting. That's good advice. I'll have to keep that in mind. Have to see if I can pick that up tomorrow. So thank you.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
So, as we progress through the 1930s, we come to Lugosi's two appearances as Ygor, the hunchback villain in Son of Frankenstein and Ghost of Frankenstein. Are these his best roles ever, perhaps only taking backseat to his portrayal of Dracula?
Well, I think Greg Beck put it very well. Dracula celebrates Lugosi the personality. Ygor celebrates Lugosi the actor. There are other films, you know, the Marie Celeste film, and there's some films that people don't really know a whole lot about that show Bela's range that unfortunately Hollywood didn't really take up. There's a great film that he made. I think the first film he made directly after Dracula. It was one of the first films. He might have done the Charlie Channel first, but shortly after Dracula, he did a film called Broad-Minded with Joey Brown. Are you familiar with this at all?
No.
Joey Brown was very much an acquired taste. If you're familiar with him, you might know him from Some Like It Hot. He's the one who provides that last zinger, that line there. Previous to that, he was a very famous comedian as a younger man, and I would say of the obnoxious variety. And Broad-Minded is very much a showcase for Joey Brown being obnoxious. And one of the people that he's obnoxious to is this character called Pancho, played by Bela Lugosi, who is hilarious in it. Like, Joey Brown manages to destroy a shortcake that Bela's trying to eat at this roadside diner or whatever it was. And look what you did to my shortcake, kind of thing. And then he does something with his car and he says, first you destroy my shortcake and now you bump into my rear end or something like, I mean, he shows up every now and then. It's kind of like this reoccurring joke. There's one great scene where Brown is talking to somebody and bragging about how he showed this guy, what for? And, if you ever saw that guy again, he'd show him what for again. And of course, Lugosi's head pops over the other side in the diner, and he's looking right at him. And there's this great close up of, it's hilarious. And so he could be hysterically funny. What was the one he made with, there were the two guys who were trying to be Martin and Lewis. He's hilarious in that one. He is by far funnier than those two clowns. And so I think one of the things that didn't happen for him is that the range. So kind of like in the classic horror side, yeah, we know Dracula, we know what we were. We know what we think we know about his Frankenstein monster portrayal, and we know the Ed Wood stuff. But a lot of people have missed out on, I think, the stuff that he did just before Dracula and just after, before he really got typecast. And I would recommend Broad-Minded to anybody, particularly Lugosi. I want to see him in a comic role and just selling it. I mean, it really is. He's also done one with W.C. Fields called International House. That was, I want to say, 1933. And
really?
Yeah, he's funny in that one as well. That's W.C. Fields and Peggy Hopkins Joyce, and so you get what you get with Fields too. And I get a kick out of Fields. So, but he's also excellent at that and delivers a performance like that. So, but I mean, as far as Ygor is concerned, I mean, come on. What an absolutely, and he was really responsible for that. I mean, Ygor doesn't exist in the scripts. Roland V. Lee was bringing him in as Niemuller, who was going to be, it basically morphed into the Crow character. And they kind of made some changes in that. I mean, Roland V. Lee was not happy with the script anyway, at all. And Universal basically said, look, we've got people hanging around on the payroll. There's no movie being made. You just get started and maybe the script will catch up. And that's kind of how it happened. And then, they brought Lugosi in and for Ygor, which really didn't exist. And he basically, through story conferences, basically created that part back and forth with Roland V. Lee. And of course, there's the famous story about how Universal hired him for $500 a week and then wanted him done in 1 week. And Roland V. Lee said he wasn't going to do that. He's going to keep Bela on that film. And that was the story that Louis and Lugosi told. And it could very well be true. I'd be curious exactly as to where and when they had that conversation. When was it that Roland V. Lee pulled Lillian aside and said this is what he was going to do? Where was she? Where were they? I don't know. I mean, I would be kind of curious about that. But it's probably pretty accurate. Given how Roland V. Lee praised the performance afterward and talked about how, the Karloff monster comparatively was weak, which Boris would be very quick to acknowledge himself because he just, that was the film that made him fail. He wasn't doing it anymore. He said the makeup did all the work. That was the end of that, and that's what bailed him out of that, so, so Ygor, yeah. But yeah, you check out the comedies.
I will. I never actually kind of thought about Bela as a comedian, so
I think
I'll have to look
it is
for
on
those.
YouTube. But you might have to be behind a paywall now. I think I saw it on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube a couple of times, I think for free. And but I think it's behind a paywall now because I think somebody discovered a copyright or something on it. But it's worth it. If it's $1.99, you'll enjoy it. I mean, he's hilarious in that film. Joey Brown is an acquired taste. You'll see what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I give Joey Brown a little bit of a break because he loved baseball, and his son, Joe Brown, became a very successful general manager with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And he was the general manager in 1971 when the Pirates won the series. In fact, I think he was the GM in 60 when they won also. So the Brown family has a nice connection to baseball.
Yes, that I
love baseball. I work at the Hall of Fame. I have to throw that in there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
One other thing about Ygor, he plays it so beautifully. He pretends that he's an idiot, but he's really quite intelligent.
He is.
He's devious. He's duplicitous, but also, wearing that makeup, playing a hunchback, that could not have been very comfortable. That was impressive too.
Yeah, Pierce worked up what I guess you would call a harness, which kind of cricked Lugosi's neck, and of course you had the hunchback on and all that. And then you had, the beard was laid in and the mustache, and he created the wig out of the yak hair and all that kind of stuff. And Lugosi had famously clashed with Pierce earlier anyway, over on Dracula before the union rules came into play. Pierce was interested in doing Lugosi's makeup, and he did do a widow's peak for Lugosi that Lugosi did wear in the film, but he wasn't interested in having Pierce do anything else. And then when they first went through the makeup for the Frankenstein test, the Florey shot, which is also kind of an interesting little bit of a deep dive that I tried to get into, again, with all credit to Greg Mank, who really got into that in his book, Boris Karloff or Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, the collaboration book there. There were Florey and Paul Ivanhoe shot it, were basically saying that the makeup was pretty close to Karloff, and complete with the bolts and all that. Of course, Karloff was the one who suggested the putty on the eyelid, so that wouldn't have been there and all that. But they had clashed over that makeup too, which Bela found to be very uncomfortable for a character that he wasn't interested in playing to begin with. And then you get to Ygor now; it's a little bit of a different story. He's not the high riding star, so he's a little bit more compliant. I think he knew what Ygor meant. It certainly meant a paycheck, and it certainly meant he was in such rough straits at that time that he had sold his dogs. Bela loved his dogs, and he had to actually get, his son was born, and the Motion Picture Relief Fund had to come in, and then I think it was Luella Parsons wrote the column about, oh, poor Bela Lugosi, why can't he get a role? What's wrong with Hollywood, kind of thing. And of course, her husband was the guy like in charge of the fund, which was, they had to bail Bela out on that. And the first thing he did with his Son of Frankenstein paycheck was to go and buy his dogs back. He just loved those dogs. He even turned down a contract in England. He was over there to do, Dark Eyes Over London. And they offered him a contract, and he would have to be away from his dogs too long, so he wouldn't do it. But it was more tolerant of the Ygor makeup because I think he knew exactly what this role meant to him, and he brought it. He absolutely brought it. But if that didn't have it now, he did say kind of on the side at one point that Jack Pierce did get even with me for the problems we had on Dracula. Apparently, hear Chaney tell it, stick his makeup brushes in my eye and poke my mouth with it, and so then Lugosi was talking about how the makeup beard might have come off a little bit too hard at night, type of thing.
Yeah.
But it was a great makeup job. And one of the things too is cool about the contemporary reviews, some of them that I cite in the book, is that one of them compares the character to something that Lon Chaney Sr. would have done. That Lugosi all decked out in that makeup and acting the way he did was pretty much like a Chaney character. And you know what?
Yeah. I see that.
Certainly worthy. And I think Ygor, I mean, as you say, kind of pretends to be dumb, but man. Yeah, there's nothing dumb going on. I love the line where he's worried about what Benson knows and what Benson might say, and Rathbone says like, oh, he'll never tell. And he goes like, no, he will never tell. And it's like, man, like a Warner Brothers cartoon, a picture of Benson should pop up with like a red, slash going through him because, we know what's going to happen to this guy somehow or other, like, he'll never tell. I mean, just marvelous, absolutely marvelous. Academy Award worthy when you come right down to it, but nobody was nominating those performances for that. It'd be interesting if Chaney had gotten nominated for Mice and Men and then Lugosi for, Son of Frankenstein. Where would that have fallen?
Right.
Chaney and Mice and Men because more of a straight picture, but both of them cheated that year.
Well, that brings us to 1943's Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and there was a lot of talk, including some in the newspaper that Lon Chaney was going to play both of the monster roles.
Yeah.
Of course, he had played the monster in Ghost of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
The talk was that he would play that, and of course, the Wolfman, which was his signature piece.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. As you explain in the book, I guess it came down to a couple of things: finances, and maybe the technology of making that happen when they're both on screen at the same time. Is that really what it was about, right?
I think, yeah. I mean, as you know, Roy William Neill had done a great film with Boris Karloff back in 1935 called The Black Room, and Karloff played, two roles. Yep. And they did this wonderful scene or two with Karloff in both roles with doubles and also with double exposure and all that, and it just almost seamless. I mean, absolutely. So that might have been the influence on George Wagner to kind of look at Neil and say, "Hey, man, yeah, we could Chaney. He did both these roles last. That'd be kind of cool." And boy, what an avalanche of publicity he would enjoy, and that would have been actually kind of cool. There were two things that, as you say, one, what they put out in the newspaper was they thought it would be too much of a strain. That's what kind of got released, that they wanted the public to kind of believe was that, he was going to do it, but the producers thought it'd be too much of a strain on him, which it probably would have been, but he would have done it. He would have complained all the way, but he would have done it. And he would have been very happy, I think, with the finished product. I think with all the complaining when it was done, he would have still been proud, saying, "That's right, I got both of them guys right there, and nobody else ever did that," kind of thing. So I love the guy, and but I think probably they were. He was really on his best behavior on that film. I think partly because of Alana Massey, but he was. I think they were a little bit concerned about how he might be if he had to deal with the two makeups kind of on the daily. He was not a Pierce fan. He described the monster makeup as being almost as bad as the Wolfman. And then he said, except for the Wolfman, there were days where I didn't have to wear it. Where with Ghost of Frankenstein, he was in the makeup every day. And this certainly would have been, if he wasn't Talbot on a particular day, he was going to be one or the other. As it turned out, of course, they did use doubles in the film, so I don't think that would have been the real big issue. Very famously, Gil Perkins came in and doubled Lugosi, and Eddie Parker doubled Lon. And, they kind of kept that quiet there for a little while, but so I think probably it was a question of, maybe it would cost too much, and maybe, they didn't really trust that Lon would make it through it without, strangling somebody for real. And, although honestly, I think he would have, he was on such good behavior on that film. I think that he might have actually pulled it off had they decided to go with it. And I think certainly he would have been proud of it later. But then of course the idea came up. The idea only lasted about a week. It wasn't really all that long. And I was kind of wondering too, because, people are trying to hash this out on the internet. And if he had done both parts, what were they going to do with the monster's voice? Because if he was going to do both parts, he was going to do the speaking monster. What would they have done with that? Would they have had Lon do that? Or would they have hired Lugosi to come in and dub the part again? And I don't have any paperwork on that. I don't have any really definitive answer on that. So I don't know. I would like to think that Lugosi was probably in back of somebody's mind at that point, we'll get Bela to come in. He'll dub it again. I mean, it was great in Ghost of Frankenstein. But, and Lon could do a European accent. I mean, there are people who talk about, when he played Son of Dracula, like, well, would you want him to do a European accent? TV shows in the 50s, he did a couple of European accents and he did very well.
Really?
So somewhere along the line there, it was a decision that was made, by directors and producers. If somebody had said to, Lon, try to sound Eastern European, I think he would have done it. But, getting back to your original point, I think probably just the expense and a little bit of worry about how he might have handled it. So
sure. So how did Universal settle on Lugosi? I guess they could have gone with Glenn Strange. He might have been another candidate.
Well, I
don't know if there was anybody else.
I don't think they were really thinking about Glenn Strange at that juncture, Lugosi might have been the logical choice because of, again, the Ygor brain going in, and that was the conception of the character, that the monster was going around with Igor's brain. And there, lines of dialogue that Siamak put in there indicated that, clever brain, new brain, clever brain, kind of thing. And Greg Mack talked about how Lugosi had developed a kind of a different variation on his Ygor voice. So I think probably the idea that Igor's brain was in there was probably a big influence. Glenn Strange, I don't think, was in the picture at that point. I'm trying to think when he first showed up in the makeup room and Pierce had a look at him, because there was also another actor by the name of Lane Chandler that they were thinking about for the monster as well. And I don't think either one of them, and again, I'll have to check this 100% for sure, but I don't think either one of them was really in the picture at that point. Remember, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman comes out in 1943, but it was shot in October of 42. So, there's a little bit of a gap in there, and what Strange was doing at that time, what Lane Chandler might have been doing at that time, and Lugosi under contract at that time. I think, those factors came into play. So,
Along Montaigne Jr.'s portrayal of Count Dracula in Count Dracula, which I love, but a lot of people have not.
Yeah. No, they trash.
You argue that Bela's monster is perhaps the most maligned acting job in the history of Universal's monsters. Tell us why.
Yeah, with Lon Chaney's Son of Dracula. Yeah, I think the two of those are the most maligned performances in Universal classic horror. Yeah, and I think that the cuts really destroyed what Lugosi was trying to do. First of all, it cut the heart out of the fact that the character was blind. Eliminating the dialogue cut the heart out of the fact that he was actually Ygor, not the Karloff version of the Frankenstein monster. This is a totally different, more evil character, more dangerous character. We got a chance to see what Ygor Stein was in the last few minutes, last about 4.5 minutes of Ghost of Frankenstein. I mean, right away, if there's a problem, turn on the gas, we'll kill all of them, kind of thing. And it's like, wow, man, you're not messing with this guy, Bummer, leave him alone, and all that. I mean, this is what he's looked for all his life. And now the monster again in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is kind of in the same position he was in Ghost of Frankenstein. The brain is in there, but the power isn't there. So I need to convince somebody to give me that power so I can get going on this, man. I'm going to be a leader of men, and we're going to move. And he's moved it up from, ruling the state to ruling the world, and live forever to watch the fruits of his wisdom. So, so I think probably here I go again. What was the original question on that? There's a reason I got into all that. Maligned.
The most maligned,
yeah,
the most maligned monstrous performance in Universal history.
Cut those things out, right? You cut those things out. So now you don't know that he can't see. And so he's staggering around, and nobody, and nobody knows why. They've probably forgotten Ghost of Frankenstein if they'd seen it. This isn't like we do now, where we look at these things on, our streaming or our videos and parse all this stuff out, right? This is a totally different experience for people. And also they cut out the dialogue, so we have no idea what the monster is thinking. And also, the Ygor character is a guy who needs a friend. And he found a friend in the monster. And he is definitely, Greg Beck talks about the Of Mice and Men vibe, and there is a big Of Mice and Men vibe in Son of Frankenstein. Not so much, I don't think, in Ghost, because the Chaney monster treats Ygor in a way that Lenny would never treat George. Throwing him against walls and smacking him and beating him up, and then eventually, being responsible for almost responsible for his physical death. That's not Of Mice and Men to me, with all, although the vibe is certainly there in Son of Frankenstein, big time. And then you get into here, and this monster is he's bent on evil, and he's got the brain to do it. He just needs the power, and then it's time to start organizing. And that, I think, is why you get that real big smile at the end. His sight obviously is back, and if you didn't know he was blind, you didn't know that. And then he's got that, big grin where it's like, yeah, man, it's on now. I always hear Back in Black in my head when that I see that scene, you know. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. I was like, oh man, it's on now. It is on now, you know. And he's about ready to get it on with his plan, you know. And I'll scoop the blonde, and oh, there's this stubborn werewolf I got to deal with. All right, let's get that out of the way, and then you know, it's on to the glory, you know. Completely different character, but you don't know that from the cut. You have to have some degree of research. So, you know, when you're me as a little kid and didn't even know Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman existed, because the book that I had was Karloff and Company by Robert K. Moss, and he just didn't deal with Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. It wasn't in his book. And so I was looking at a mummy movie, I thought, and then Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman got showed instead. It was a film I didn't even know existed. So I'm watching it for the first time, and I'm seeing Lugosi as the monster, and I just went with whatever I was, 11 or whatever. I just went with that. This is the same character that I saw Boris Karloff play, that I saw Glenn Strange play in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And so this is what Lugosi's doing with it. And okay, so he's sort of staggering around, and he looks a little bit weak. And well, lo and behold, that's how the character was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we don't see it. So people are judging. And then I understand that. I get that too online. I'll write something. I spend too much time online. And I'll write some things on there like, yeah, well, you know, you guys probably don't realize, or maybe you do realize, but you know, this is what it would have been, and blah, blah, blah. And I get back, you know, sometimes I get back, well, that's what's there.
Yeah.
And I can't argue with that, because that's correct. That is what's there. So if you're coming to that film for the first time and you're looking at that approach to the monster for the first time without any idea of what was supposed to be, then you look at it and you go like, wow, man, I'm not, he's not scaring me. You know, I'm just, you know, no. So I think he's unfairly maligned. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of write the book. I wanted to, you know, I don't want to say like in defense of Bela, but I wanted to kind of like let, you know, monster kids who are, you know, into this kind of thing, but maybe not like to the depth of the people who are, you know, involved in the Rondo Awards, you know, in the classic horror chat room and all that. I mean, you know, when I posted the book over there, I said, look, man, none of you folks here are going to learn anything that you don't know, but you might like the way I told it, you know, kind of thing. And I've got some very positive feedback from those guys in the know, but you know, this was basically for the monster fan who doesn't really know all this stuff, but really loves these movies and would kind of like to get maybe to the bottom of what did happen.
Yeah.
As far as I can piece it together.
Right.
Go all day long about Chaney in Son of Dracula and what I thought was going on there, but I'll spare you that.
Earlier, you touched upon one of the theories as to why they took out Lugosi's dialogue. And you've talked about how some people, including the writer, was it the writer or the director?
Yeah, it was Kurt Siodmak. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Kurt had a very low.
He said
anyway.
Yeah, he said, you know, the read that he gave was laughably bad. It's comical. We can't keep it in.
Yeah.
Here's why I don't buy it. Lugosi's a talented actor. He can do second and third and fourth takes. You don't like the way he does it one way, you can try it again, and he can probably give you something different. He had that ability, that adaptability to do so. Yeah. So I just don't buy it. So what is the most logical theory as to why they took all those lines out?
Well, I mean, Kurt never liked Lugosi anyway. I mean, he always talked about how Lugosi couldn't act his way out of a paper bag, that he had one character, Dracula, that stuck, and it stuck because it was a Hungarian character, and that was it. And he always categorized Lugosi as being a pest. I think that the dialogue was very grandiose. Now, one of the things I did do in my book is I pulled some lines from Hitler and kind of put them in comparison to some of the lines that were in Siodmak's script. I pulled some of the more mild stuff from Hitler. I stayed away from, you know, like the anti-Semitic stuff and all that. It doesn't need any more airing. but I did pull stuff about how his government and the things that would demonstrate Hitler's megalomania. And hey, man, what Siodmak had the monster saying would not be out of place in a Hitler speech from, say, 1934. Okay. And it might be that the lines were too ripe and that people couldn't really, for some reason, they could see it coming out of a guy, with a silly mustache in German, but they couldn't see it coming out of the Frankenstein monster because their Frankenstein monster perception was still Boris Karloff, which this was not by any means. And I mean, are the lines kind of big and grandiose? Yes. Are they within the realm of what some of those European megalomaniacs were saying at that time? Yes. So, Bela never said anything about it.
Yeah.
I could find. And by the time they got around to cutting that, he was off making the Ape Man. So he wasn't even around when the screening happened or anything like that. And so they were, he was elsewhere while they were butchering that up. He had no say in that, obviously. I don't think they brought him back for any dubbing or anything that I could find anyway. And so what happens with that, I think it might have been a combination of a couple of things. I think you might have had some chuckles. Again, we don't know who. We don't know why. We don't know what they said. We have what Siodmak said, but we have to take into consideration how he felt about Lugosi to begin with. And we don't have any comment from Lugosi that I could find on it. Now, here's some other things like as you talked about, second, third takes, et cetera, et cetera. On the set on any given day, there are more than 20 people, a lot more than 20. And, the director's there every day. Okay. One of the guys said the director had no sense of humor, so he wouldn't have caught it. Okay. Cameraman didn't catch it. Come on. Script people didn't catch it. You've got set designers, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you've got Maria Ospinskaya and Patrick Knowles in a scene with the talking monster. Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't catch it. Chaney plays 3 scenes with the talking monster. One that's very extensive. The first scene where they meet, he breaks him out of that ice. That dialogue scene is very extensive. They're doing back and forth. Chaney's not going around saying like, "Oh, I can't believe what he's doing over there, man." Nobody said anything. And there were reporters on set, and at least 2 that Lugosi had dialogue. Now, were they there when he was shooting the dialogue? I don't know, but they were there on the set when there were scenes that contained dialogue. Luis Rosado was there the day that they were pulling the box out of the hidden spot in the burned sanatorium, and Chaney couldn't find the diary, and Lugosi had dialogue in that scene. And also Harrison Carroll was there the day that Lugosi did the roar, with the stick. And he even commented on that. Lugosi turned to him and said, like, that's the worst part of this whole thing. You feel like a big jerk every time you do that, But there was not as well. So I'm kind of feeling like Rosado and Carroll might have been there on days that dialogue was shot. And they never said. So what does it come down to? Does it come down to a couple of people laughing and, Universal not want to take a chance? Does it come down to the dialogue was just way over the top and maybe a little too political? Maybe that was it. Maybe it was like, pull that out of there, man, because maybe this is too much like Hitler, and we're not making really a political film here.
Maybe Siodmak should have pointed the finger at himself.
Certainly the dialogue that he wrote in the screenplay that has been published is, it's very ripe. It's also interesting in that the monster is, again, very much Ygor in that he hates to be alone. And that's one of the reasons why he stumbles into the town when, after the Festival of the New Wine song. He's afraid that the Larry character has left him. And Ygor is incredibly afraid of being alone. It goes to Frankenstein. He even says that, you want to make him your friend, not mine. And I would be alone. I'd be all alone. And he doesn't want to be all alone. And that is carried over into Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which again, you get these criticisms about him. What's he doing stumbling around in the town? I mean, what's that all about, kind of thing? Well, what it's all about is explained later on in the dialogue. He was scared that Talbot had ditched him, and he went down there to see what was going on, and he was lonely. He was scared. So we lose so much of that character because of these, and I think it's a combination of those things, but people were laughing. Why? Did they ever explain? I don't know. Did anybody ask? Did George Wagner go to somebody in that and say, like, hey, man, can you tell me why you were laughing? What was that? We have no record of that whatsoever. And so many people on the set, and it doesn't seem like anybody caught that. So.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not buying what Kurt said as 100% accurate.
Oh, geez.
I mean, Kurt was a great writer, but he was also an unbelievable storyteller. And he talked about how he could construct stories out of the blue sky. He constructs stories out of the blue sky. He tells the story about how Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman came about, and he was sitting with, he calls her Mary McDonnell and Yvonne DiCarlo. And George Wagner is walking by, and Siodmak's working on the script for the climax. And, they get into this whole, hey, I've got a great idea for you. Frankenstein Wolf's the Meat Man. It's a great story. Couldn't have happened. Marie McDonnell was gone by the time Yvonne DiCarlo got hired at Universal, and Siodmak's really working on the climax. Well, that's Frankenstein Wolfman is in the theater by that time. Okay, so it's a great story, but yeah, and he's very entertaining to listen to, but you got to be a little bit careful. I got to be careful with all of them. They're great storytellers. They're in the movies. That's their job. And it's our job to try and tease this out and go like, oh man, my readers are going to pull their hair out. It's like trying to tell people that Dracula didn't really get released on Valentine's Day in 1931. They do not want to give that up. I've got the newspaper article about the major premiere in, are you ready for this? Portland, Maine on February 5th, 1931, and how proud they were at Keith's Theater to have this world premiere. It played in New London and it played in Bangor, Maine, and all that before it got to New York on February 12th, not February 14th. But they don't want to give that. People just don't want to give that up. It's like I'm stealing their candy, So,
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Okay. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but to me, it's kind of interesting what really happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
As far as we can tell. And,
wow.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. Do you happen to know how Bela might have reacted when he discovered that so much of that dialogue was actually taken out from that finished film, or maybe he didn't even know? Like, do you have any idea?
He never, that I could find, and I hope this prompts somebody to, dig into some of their files or interviews that I might have missed or whatever. I as far as I could find, he never said anything about it.
Oh, wow.
Never. Now, he did keep a picture or two of the monster in his, Bela in the makeup in his scrapbook. So, and one of them I reproduced because it's in public domain. So I was able to reproduce it in the book, which was kind of cool. But he did have a degree of pride in it. I don't know that he ever saw it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. And he probably, I would guess, certainly he would have if they'd hired him to, show up with a guy in a gorilla costume, like they did to him for House of Wax, But I can't find anything that he ever said about it. I mean, he did talk about the monster in the 50s. It was always kind of related to back to the 1931 time of the monster. How he had at one point he did say that he had made a Frankenstein monster for himself, that he'd made kind of his own rival, but he meant a professional rival with Boris Karloff. It wasn't he didn't hate Karloff. I don't think Karloff hated Lugosi. I don't think he was particularly thrilled with him, but I don't. They didn't hate each other, and they didn't have the right. Lillian disliked Karloff more than Bela did. I think Lillian disliked the idea of Karloff more than Bela did. And I can understand that. I mean, she talked about Karloff being a cold fish and this and that, and I'm kind of wondering when that was. I mean, she was known to be on the set the day that they had that big party for Karloff's birthday and also the celebration of the birth of his daughter Sarah. She might have been on the set, a couple of times. Other than that, I mean, there are some photos of her with the little Bela Jr., on the set, and there's Ygor, and I don't know, the kid's and so I don't know what she saw, or whether it was Bela coming home and like, I cannot stand these people. They are such cold fish. I'm trying so hard, so I don't know where she really got that either, unless it was, but so much of that is kind of interesting when it comes down to what he would say later on about Karloff, and he always did kind of say that I created a professional rival for myself, but it was for Bela, it was no rival.
Oh wow, and I just have like one more follow-up question.
Sure.
Something that just kind of like happened earlier this year. There was like the long lost epilogue from 1931 Dracula that it just recently turned up in a private collection.
Yeah.
Is there any chance, do you think, that Lugosi's missing dialogue or footage or anything might be out there somewhere?
Would I love that? I mean, I would. Oh boy, everybody would love that. I hope so. Is there a chance? I mean, I've kind of like thrown this out there, and I've the answer that comes back is no, but I mean, this other thing was recreated. I think it was a 16 millimeter silent print.
Yeah.
And actually, the company that did this is out of Ellenville, New York, where I was born, which is kind of interesting. I didn't realize that until I researched this. I'm doing this other thing on Edge of Grand Phone now. And it was kind of cool that, oh, wow, man, this is coming out of where I was. But what they did was they found the 16 millimeter and then they pieced together the soundtrack. What's scary now is because of the AI, a lot of people, when they saw that reconstruction at first, is like, oh, this is AI. This is AI. And dismiss it 100%. This can't be real. And that's scary.
Yeah.
Because now we don't know. I mean, I looked at it, I kind of feel like, but they're getting better and better with the AI. I would love to see the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman footage be found. I would love it, and I think it would redeem in a lot of ways. I think it would tell us what exactly went wrong, or what people perceived went wrong. But I also think it would redeem Bela Lugosi's performance. Because I think you would see exactly that this is not the Karloff character. This is not the person who accidentally, or the created person who accidentally tossed Maria into the lake. This is Ygor in that body that would make a leader of men, and that's a scary character because he's ready to guess right from the get go. There's that great in Ghost where Cheney is looking through the window as Ygor Stein, and the villagers are dying right in front of him. And he's got this evil grin on it, and it's like, wow, and then of course Lugosi picks that or actually does his own thing with that. Frankenstein. So I would love to see it. I did an AI thing in my book. I took the description of the monster from Ivanhoe and from Flory, and then added kind of what Van Sloan said about a bigger head and polished skin, and then I kind of looked at, all right, so he wouldn't have had the eyelids and all that, and I kind of plugged that in to AI, and I had mixed feelings on AI, but I kind of plugged it in to kind of have some sort of idea of what Bela may have looked like if those memories are accurate. And I did put that in the book with a paragraph about, gigantic paragraph that this is AI, this is not real. I'm not trying to say this is real. This was my experiment, because I don't want anybody going out there like, well, Bill Fleck says he found this. No. Bill Fleck put this stuff in there because I have that kind of mixed feeling about it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just kind of like a fun experiment, but I definitely 100% in the book made it that it was an experiment. So I'm hoping that doesn't show up on the internet and somebody saying, "Wow, we found it."
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's my guess, which is also, I'm very clear about it. It's my guess. Because AI is a little bit scary.
Yes.
It is a
Yeah.
little bit. And so, I would love it though. I would absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Let's get London After Midnight. I just reread some things that William K. Everson said about it. And that was a boring film. He apparently saw it. It's not as great as everybody thinks it is, and it'll be a big disappointment if it's ever found. He's writing this in 1986.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'd still like to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, apparently Mystery of the Wax Museum was a little bit of a disappointment when they found that had been gone for a long time, and then showed it, and it was sort of like, all right, it's not good. It's not what everybody remembers, but I hope so.
Awesome.
Then we could all say,
No.
Bela, you are avenged.
Bill, before we let you go, 2 quick final questions. As you mentioned earlier, the monster is blind in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. That explains why Lugosi is walking around, the arms extended. Was that scripted
as half blind,
or did he improvise?
Yes. No, I mean, it's scripted as far as what the arms. No, the action is described like, the monster goes here, or the monster goes there. The walk and all that is pretty much Bela's interpretation. Siadmak describes the monster as being half blind, so he doesn't see very well. He doesn't see, he can see like the light where the laboratory is coming from and all that. And he describes his vision to Mannering as, I can hardly see you, so he's got this really weak vision. And the groping and all that, I don't remember any specific stage direction that comes from Siadmak that describes that. Although he does describe how the monster is at times emotionally weakened. And he even has the monster say it, that how weak he is. And at one point, Talbot even says to him, if the villagers come here and they bury you 5 rods deep, what are you going to do? And like, oh yeah, that's right, that could happen. So the overall character impression is there, that he's half blind, he's weak, he's lonely, and he's a megalomaniac, and he wants power. Some of the stuff that Lugosi did with it is obviously out of an outgrowth of the script.
Yeah. And it lasted because almost every Frankenstein portrayal since then, you have seen the extended arms.
Right?
Now, maybe some of that is a parody, but some of that is also a legitimate copy of what Lugosi started. And I think it shows a little bit of his genius.
Yeah, well, Tom Weaver and Greg Mank point that out for sure, and I'm sure there's a couple others, and then I threw that in there too, credited, because I didn't make that up, but that is correct. A lot of people who are doing the monster are doing Lugosi without knowing it. Yeah.
Last question, Bill. We have about 2 minutes. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. It's drawn mixed reviews over the years. I like it. It's fun. You've got the Festival of the New Wine.
I like that.
You've got Lawrence Talbot losing his temper and going into a raid.
Yeah.
You've got the scene in the block of ice. There's some real fun stuff in there. But I then look at it and said, man, this could have been so much better. What's your assessment of it?
I think it would have been better had we had the Lugosi speaking monster. I think it would have made more sense. There's some folks who feel like, that would have slowed down the action, but it would have made the action, I think, make a lot more sense. The opening scene is absolutely amazing. What Roy William Neal was able to do with the camera and the lighting. And I mean, you're talking about a beat production that looks like this absolutely beautiful A production. It does get choppy in the end, and people not knowing what had happened with that would probably hold that against the film. And again, would I prefer to have seen The Wolfman in a standalone sequel? Yeah, I would have. But given what was accomplished with this, it's a great Chaney performance. It's a great Ospinskaya performance. It's a great Atwell performance. Patrick Knowles, everybody in the film. Rex Evans as Vasek, the the innkeeper. I mean, everybody in the film, Dwight Fry, they really, really bring it. And Lugosi would have brought it too. He did bring it. It just didn't get into the film.
Yeah.
So it's one of those films that I can watch over and over again because I know I'm going to be entertained, and I just don't know why. It has that magic to it. And that's one of the reasons I got into this book too, is because I love the idea of the magic. Yeah. And there it is.
The book is Bela's Monster, Lugosi, the Monster, and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. I'm about halfway through it. Really enjoying it. Highly recommend it. Go buy the book. It's available at Amazon.com. It's Bill Fleck's latest. Congratulations on the book. I hope it sells many copies for you, and people do continue to talk about it as they're doing now.
And I'm actually getting a lot of positive feedback from people who know. I'm very, very flattered by that. And if anybody wants like an autographed copy, they can get in touch with me, and we can work it out. You know, I mean,
Also, subscribe to Bill's newsletter, is Classic Horror Behind the Scenes. I just got one in the email, but I haven't had a chance to read it, so I don't know what it's about. I'm looking forward to reading that later.
Frankenstein. It's about okay. I'm a little late to the party, but I did get it. I did get around to seeing it, and I do like it. And so there's kind of like that's what that's about.
Very nice, Bill. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Believe you me, it's always fun to talk to you guys.
Oh, we appreciate it. Bill Fleck, author, writer, blogger. Again, his new book, Bela's Monster, Lugosi, the Monster, and Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. We thank Bill for joining us. We thank, of course, Tracy, our co-host and producer, for being with us. We thank all of you for joining us in this strange museum of the macabre. And we do hope we'll see you again next time, right here in the Ghostly Gallery.